This screencast introduces you to the endocrine system, which may be found in Chapter 9 of your textbook. This screencast was designed to achieve the following objectives. Describe the functions of the endocrine system. List the processes that are controlled by the endocrine system. Define a ligand. Describe a hormone. The endocrine system functions to coordinate and direct the activity of the many organ systems of the body. So in this respect, it partners with the nervous system, which also coordinates and directs the activities of the other organ systems. However, we saw that the nervous system responds in milliseconds, whereas the endocrine system takes longer to respond, minutes, hours, sometimes days for a full response to be enacted. So we refer to the nervous system as the fast controlling system and the endocrine system often as the slow controlling system, since it responds much more slowly than the nervous system. The endocrine system controls continuous processes which are involved in maintaining homeostasis, and we'll elaborate on that in a moment. And the endocrine system also controls processes that occur over very long periods of time, such as growth and development. Think of all the changes, for example, that occur from birth to, say, the end of puberty, 15 to 21 years of age. All of those changes that occur over a long period of time are directed and coordinated by the endocrine system principally. I want to highlight several major processes that are principally controlled by the endocrine system. We've already talked about growth and development, so I will not elaborate further there. The proper formation or development of the reproductive system is also under the control of the endocrine system. And after the reproductive system is fully developed by the end of puberty, maintaining the function of the reproductive system is the responsibility of the endocrine system. The endocrine system also plays a vital role in mobilizing the body to defend or respond to stressors. In certain cases, those stressors could be the invasion of the body by microorganisms. In other cases, a stressor is simply a situation that requires an increase or elevation in the activity of the body. For example, strenuous exercise or running a marathon or working long hours while also going to school, while also taking care of kids. Again, anything that requires an increase in the body's activity is a stressor, and the endocrine system plays a vital role in allowing the body to respond and deal with stressors. Much of homeostasis is maintained by the endocrine system. When we think about body temperature and blood pressure and blood sugar levels, blood calcium levels, all of which are extremely important in terms of maintaining homeostasis, the endocrine system plays vital, major roles in maintaining much of homeostasis. And lastly, the endocrine system is the main regulator of metabolism. Remember that metabolism is the sum of all of the chemical reactions occurring in the body, and it is under the control of the endocrine system. So as you can see, the endocrine system plays a very important role in maintaining and controlling major processes in the human body. Since we've already covered the nervous system and you have a basic understanding of the nervous system, I would like to compare the endocrine system to the nervous system. That is, sort of applying what you know to what you may not know with respect to the endocrine system. So when we look at the basic functional unit of the nervous system, it was a neuron. In contrast, in the endocrine system, it's going to be a cuboidal cell of a gland or a glandular cell. That's the functional unit of the endocrine system. In the nervous system, neurons were organized into nuclei or ganglia. Remember that nuclei were clusters of cell bodies in the central nervous system. In the peripheral nervous system, we called them ganglia. In the endocrine system, the cuboidal cells are clustered into endocrine glands. In the nervous system, the method of communication was the release of neurotransmitters. Now, those neurotransmitters were released in response to action potentials that moved through the axons. But in order to excite or to affect a target cells, neurotransmitters were released into the synaptic cleft. In the endocrine system, the method of communication will be hormones. Hormones will allow the glandular cells of the endocrine system to communicate and cause changes in the target cells. The route of communication in the nervous system were nerve fibers, fiber tracts, or nerves. In the endocrine system, the route of communication will be blood vessels. Hormones will enter the blood vessels, and those blood vessels will take the hormones to the target cells throughout the body. Lastly, when we compare the speed of the nervous system to the endocrine system, and we've already touched on this, the nervous system is much more fast acting in responding to a stimulus compared to the endocrine system. So here we have it, two controlling systems, nervous system, endocrine system, different basic functional units, different cellular organization, different methods of communication, routes of communication, and different speeds. The endocrine system communicates, coordinates, and controls other cells, organs, and organ systems by secreting compounds which bind to receptors of their target cells. Now, I want to introduce a new term to you, and it's a ligand. A ligand is a compound that binds to receptors. It comes from the Greek word ligare, which means to bind. And you're already familiar with some ligands. For example, neurotransmitters are ligands. They're ligands that are secreted by the neurons into the synaptic cleft, and then they bind receptors on the receiving cell. You may have heard the term paracrine factors, and if you haven't heard it before, probably as you go through your college years, you may hear that term if you take other biological science courses. Ligands are substances secreted by cells which bind to receptors on nearby cells. For example, histamine is secreted by cells in response to infection or response to an allergen, and they bind to cells of nearby blood vessels, causing those blood vessels to dilate. Hormones, which we're going to focus on the endocrine system because that's the ligand through which the endocrine system communicates, coordinates, and controls other organ systems. Hormones are secreted by cells into the interstitial fluid in one part of the body. The hormone then enters the bloodstream and is carried throughout the body into the interstitial fluid in other parts of the body, and then bind receptors on or in cells located in other parts of the body. So a hormone is a ligand that's secreted in one part of the body and binds receptors on target cells and other parts of the body. Now, I will warn you that there is a gray area between paracrine factors and hormones. You do have some situations where hormones don't travel very far, and so they're sometimes referred to as local hormones because they really don't travel very far from the cells that secrete them. And so there is a bit of a gray area between, well, when do we call a substance a paracrine factor versus a hormone? We're going to stay away from that argument in this chapter. And every substance that's secreted by the glands and cells that we're going to talk about, we're just going to refer to them as hormones, and I'm not going to use the term paracrine factor. But it is in your book, and you may run into that term later on in your educational career. And I at least wanted you to be aware of the term paracrine factors and what it means versus hormones. So let's now talk about the production of hormones. So hormones are produced by cuboidal cells found in endocrine glands. So these specialized cells secrete hormones into their extracellular fluid, and then from the extracellular fluid they diffuse into nearby capillaries, entering the blood, and then that blood carries those hormones throughout the body. The pancreas is a wonderful example of an organ that contains endocrine glands. Now, the interesting thing about many endocrine organs, and the pancreas is considered an endocrine organ, is that many of these organs have dual responsibilities. That is, they don't only secrete hormones, they have other functions. And the pancreas is a perfect example. The pancreas produces digestive enzymes as well as produces some very important hormones. So if we were to take the pancreas, and it is a correct anatomical position, and if we were to dissect it as shown here, separating it into a right and left, so taking a sagittal section and then turning that sagittal section so that you could see it, we'd have the following view. Now notice that we have color-coded here some glands in blue and other glands in pink. The glands in blue are the exocrine glands. These are glands that produce substances that are secreted outside of the body. Exocrine glands, if you remember, have ducts which move the secretions to the exterior of the body. About 90% of the mass of your pancreas is exocrine, making digestive enzymes that are secreted into the small intestine. The other 10% produce hormones, which are released into the interstitial fluid and then the blood. The glands shown in pink are the endocrine glands. Notice they do not have ducts. They release their hormones into the interstitial fluid. From the interstitial fluid, it diffuses into nearby capillaries, entering the blood, and then are carried throughout the body. This figure, which is similar to a figure in your book, illustrates what are called endocrine organs. These are organs which play vital roles in the functioning of the endocrine system. So the pineal gland, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, etc., etc. All of those glands produce very important hormones. Notice, however, that many of these organs also have other functions completely separate from their role of producing hormones. We already talked about the pancreas and how it produces digestive enzymes as well as hormones. The ovaries and the testes both produce the sex hormones, but they also have other functions such as the production of male and female gametes. So many endocrine organs are not simply dedicated to the production of hormones, but also to other functions as well. I also want you to be aware that there are many other organs which are not considered endocrine organs, but yet also produce hormones. The kidneys, the heart, the liver, various portions of your digestive tract, as well as the placenta, all produce very important hormones. So there are many organs and many tissues that, while they're not considered endocrine organs, do produce very important hormones. Now let's review the objectives of this screencast, describe the functions of the endocrine system, list some processes that are controlled by the endocrine system, define a ligand, and lastly, describe a hormone. Hormones and receptors is the topic of the next screencast.